This forum is 5 in a series, and this first one focuses specifically on minority businesses, and we are happy to have 4 great speakers who will be able to dissect the issue to us to help us to better understand the impact on minority businesses. So thank you so much. So this event is a collaboration between the Urban Search Institute, School of Business, headed by Dr. Karen Shamwe. We also have Career Services of UNT Dallas, the Dallas Black Chamber, and then the Greater Dallas Hispanic Chamber as collaborators. This is actually not our first time collaborating to be able to address topical issues affecting our community. So I'm glad once again, we are able to collaborate to make this event happen. I just want to say a little bit about the Urban Search Institute. The Institute is a key part of UNT Dallas. Our aim is to be able to facilitate social and transformational change, to be able to bring positive citizen development in the southern sector of Dallas and Dallas County in general. So we've, over the years, worked with various nonprofits on research and service related projects. We've also worked with the City of Dallas on some of their initiatives as well. So we are always on the lookout for new partners so that together we can promote transformational change in Southern Dallas. So I'm glad all of you are able to join the session today. So I will look forward to an insightful session, and I will now hand over to my colleague, Mike Houston, to moderate this session. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. James Agbodzakey. I appreciate all of the work that you're doing with the Search Institute and providing programming, not only for our university community, but also for Dallas as a whole. As we know, these last several months have been really challenging for our families, for our communities, for our economy, and for our society. And there's been a season of confusion and a season of data collecting. And so the COVID-19 Forum series, which is going to be presented every week on every Tuesday from 12 until 1:30 or so, is setting its purpose is so that we can illuminate some of the issues and some of the impacts of what COVID has done in our communities. This week, we will start first with the impact of COVID in minority businesses. You will hear at the end of this meeting the rest of our series, series 2 through 5, in which we will have subject matter experts from various subject matters, whether it's education, transportation, healthcare, etc., and housing, and mortgaging, and banking, to give reports on what's been happening for the last 3 or 4 months during this pandemic season within their organizations, how they're impacting the communities, but most importantly, the strategy on how we can survive post this pandemic in the new world. And so I am very excited to have 4 amazing speakers. And I would like to start first with Rick Ortiz. Rick Ortiz is I believe I have Harrison Blair. My apologies. Harrison Blair is the president of the Dallas Black Chamber of Commerce. Harrison is the president of the largest and oldest Black chamber in the country, with its founding in 1926. And he is actually the youngest, one of the youngest executive directors or presidents in its 94-year history. Harrison, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Mr. Houston. I appreciate you.
No problem, no problem. The floor is yours. Each speaker will have 10 minutes to make an address on what they've done, what their organizations are, and their responsibilities within this pandemic. And then we will allow a question or two individually first, and then we will have all 4 the rest of the speakers speak. And then at the end, we will have time for questions and answers for everyone. Now, if you have questions, if you're on Facebook Live, if you're on Zoom, please write your questions in the chat box, because we have a representative here on our committee who is organizing those questions and can, so that we can address them at the appropriate time. If you're not speaking, please ensure that your computers or your devices are on mute so that we can have an uninterrupted program. President Blair, the floor is yours. We actually have given you capabilities to share your screen so that you can share your presentation.
So, Mr. Houston, I'm hitting the screen share button and it's telling me that the host has it disabled. If you could just make sure it's unlocked, and then I'll go ahead and share that presentation, sir.
Okay. Harrison Blair should now be a co-host now.
Perfect. So we are ready. Let me go ahead and share this with you. We should be here in just a second. I'm the oldest millennial, you know, Houston.
Sorry, that means that soul is intact. That's good. That's a good thing.
So here goes. Let me go ahead and share this screen with you. So I want to firstly say thank you to UNT Dallas. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Right, perfect. I want to thank you for the opportunity to share what we've been doing, and this partnership is really important to us. Professor Agbodzakey, thank you for all you've done to bring us together. And Professor Houston, thank you for ensuring that the Black Chamber had a seat at this table. And this is a true honor, especially when we have someone like Charles ONeal on the line who has done this job and has done it well, and is now serving at a higher level at the state level. So we appreciate you. Much love, and thank you for the opportunity. So just to jump in, let's talk about the history of the DBCC. We were founded in 1926 here in Dallas. Has as much to do with the burning of Black Wall Street as it does with the National Negro Business League being more national than local, and having to figure out what we were going to do on a local level. So a good amount of history is in here about what we do, but our mission is really simple. We promote the creation, the growth and the general welfare of Black-owned businesses and entities in the North Texas region. And we've done so since 1926. And we do that through a number of programs and opportunities, really through referrals, partnerships, seminars, technical assistance, and we do a lot of marketing for members. So just to start there. And how do we help our members? This is just a basic list of a lot of what we've been doing during this period in COVID-19. But our services haven't changed as much. We hadn't had to pivot as much because we were already doing a lot of virtual meetups with a lot of members. It just got way more important now that outside is closed. And so a few of the programs that the Chamber is really focused on, especially within the context of COVID-19. Number one is our Executive Business Leadership Program. One of the main issues we saw with funding or emergency funding for businesses, small Black businesses, was that there was just no relationship between the SBA lenders and these small Black businesses. So also, a lot of these businesses were going to apply for this loan with just a tax return. And that's because there's a lot of need around resources and social resources that Black businesses need. So the Executive Business Leadership School brings people together, gives them an opportunity to meet executive to executive, and it gives them some skill sets that you may not have if you're not an MBA, that you may need to grow. So there's some information about that. Kidpreneur Camp is much of the same, but it's mostly for high school students. We believe that if you're a student in school and you're looking to get really interested in math or science or any of the other fields that we're talking about, entrepreneurship may be a way to get kids locked into why they should be performing well in school and what really matters in the classroom. And then finally, Coffee and Conversations, or not finally, but one of the last programs, Coffee and Conversations helps us to connect with our elected officials, which is really important right now. We need to be talking to folks about, what they believe. There are a lot of conversations going on around policy, specifically around policing in America. And as we look at the angst in the streets, we just can't continue to move in a way where you can't protect your own body and have no hope of really building wealth or quality life in this country. So this is something that we think is very important. And then finally, the Power Breakfast. This is something that was created by some of the millennials on our board, including Mr. Matt Houston himself. And the Power Breakfast is all about networking. And I just want to point out that a lot of our programming is around networking because, as the Congressional Black Caucus pointed out in a policy paper they published last year, social networking is a huge issue in the Black community around resources so that you can grow your business. It's number two, in fact, right behind access to capital. that's one of those resources that you need. It's really helpful to have somebody in your industry who understands what to do when you're starting out to help you not make some of those same mistakes. And especially knowing how difficult it is for small Black businesses, that's something that we definitely want to offer. And now, to talk about what we've been focused on during COVID-19, our programming has shifted just a bit. And around it, we really hosted a lot of events around emergency funding, how businesses could pivot in the pandemic. We've done a lot of promoting cooperative economics, and not just promoting it, but inviting businesses to come to the chamber and get some help structuring how your company could look if you're trying to survive and you're smaller. And we're just really convincing a lot of businesses who have been in position to partner to go ahead and make that next step. So that's been really important for us. And then, of course, our impact on emergency funding. Everybody knows that big banks had a really difficult time working with small businesses, and there were a number of bottlenecks that created this. One, the SBA only really worked with 800 lenders across the entire nation prior to COVID-19. And as we know, access to banks and banking for African Americans has been an issue. Redlining has been on the books for a long time. We've all known about it. So a lot of what we were trying to figure out is how do we help businesses that don't have a relationship with the SBA, who don't have a relationship with lenders. And we had one of our members who is a fintech developer, among other things, named Joseph Akintilayo, step up to help us focus on using technology and simple solutions to help businesses get their applications turned in. And out of the 400 plus businesses that we touched, we helped 223 apply for loans. And out of that 223, 101 of those businesses got access to $4.5 million through us. Now, we understand that's not a huge number, but this is a better ratio than most of the large banks. And we're not simply pointing fingers, but we understand that the policy that they use to try to get this funding to small Black businesses and minority businesses had a lot of cracks in it structurally. We understood it there. Around business assistance, we helped those 220, well, actually the number's grown, but this is the number we had from last week. We helped 223 firms really figure out what their plans were for continuing in the future. Are you going to grow? Are you going to switch your operation? What about your organization is going to pivot? Is it your staff? Have you had to lay anybody off? So in this period, we asked a lot of questions. We learned from a lot of businesses, and we know that we are a frontline organization because simply we're here with these businesses, and they come to us for these resources on a regular basis. And a lot of them, as Matt said, they need specialized help. A lot of the application processes were too difficult because they either don't have that paperwork, or they're unaware that they need to be filing that paperwork, or they don't have the type of advisors that you would typically have. But these are real businesses that are doing anywhere from 5 to 10 million in revenue every year. So this was really important to us. And then finally, some data that we are working in coordination with TAC on, and I'll try to make sure I can zoom in on these. I'm still getting my technological prowess down with this. But as you can see, we just asked some questions to business owners just to start out about how they've been impacted. And from this survey data, we realized that anywhere from 30 to 40% of small Black businesses in Texas and in the North Texas region could fail, simply because they're closed, they've lost profits, they did not have access to emergency funding. And now, if you're in the downtown area and there have been protests, you may have been looted. You may have been caught up in the recent protests. So there's just been a lot of angst around, what businesses are going to do in lack of access to funding. So now let's talk a bit about some advocacy that we're really focused on. One of the concepts that we think can really change not only the city of Dallas, but the North Texas region is something like a guarantee pool fund. Now, to make it short and sweet, a guarantee in our community, somebody's going to sign for you so that you can get access to an apartment, or you can lease a car, or you can now have access to some of those things that really help improve your quality of life. Well, instead of a family member like your uncle or your family or your cousin guaranteeing something or a product for you, we want the city, the county, and large foundations and organizations like chambers of commerce to raise a fund and to use that fund to guarantee minority-owned businesses, people of color, people who are first-time home buyers. And the reason we're specifically looking at affordable housing is because Dallas has been aware that we had a lack of housing, but we also have a lack of funding for people who live here who want to get an affordable house. So we also know that if you have access to an affordable house, a lot of times small business owners who are starting their business draw equity from their home at a bank to be able to start a business. So if we make more affordable homeowners, then we can create more businesses in our community, which is a huge part of the Chamber's mission. And right now in America, only 4% of businesses are African-American owned. And we want to change that. We think this concept will help us do that. So, this just gives a brief overview of what a guarantee is and how other organizations across the nation have scaled it. And right now, there's only maybe 2 or 3 organizations partnering out of California who are, they use $33 million to unlock access to $110 million for minority-owned businesses, first-time home buyers, and for them, sustainable development. But we want to turn Dallas into a small business launch pad. I want the city of Dallas to be just as excited about small and minority firms, which make up almost a quarter of business in Dallas, as they are about inviting Amazon here. When we had that conversation just last year, the city laid everything on the table. They laid their wallet out. They laid out their best pictures. They laid out the best properties. They really wanted to court them. When we are that excited about small business, which really employs over half the workforce in America, then we'll be serious about making sure that we have equity. And Mr. Houston, that is the entirety of my presentation. And I will now stop sharing my screen and turn it back over to you.
Thank you very much for this presentation. Real quickly, if there's anyone who's interested in reaching out to the Chamber, would you mind putting your website and your social media handles and your phone number in the webinar chat feature, please?
Yes, sir. I'm typing it in there now.
Thank you. Now, we will have a presentation with Harrison's colleague, Mr. Rick Ortiz, President and CEO of the Greater Dallas Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. A little bit about Rick first. Rick is president, as I stated, of the Greater Dallas Hispanic, the award-winning Greater Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. He was unanimously chosen by the Board of Directors in 2012 to lead the organization. During his tenure as chairman of the board first, Ortiz took on some of the management responsibilities. Most people in nonprofits know when you become a board chair, you're not only serving your board, but you are volunteering your talents and your treasures as well. So thank you for that. But before he joined the chamber as president, he was an attorney specializing in business and tort litigation. He has represented individuals, small and large businesses, financial institutions, leasing companies, governmental entities, and nonprofit organizations, and has served as general counsel to boards of directors. He is a widely experienced individual who is using those skill sets to enhance the Hispanic business community to build its ecosystem. Mr. Rick Ortiz, thank you for joining us, and we're excited to hear your presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Houston. I really, truly appreciate it. Check will be in the mail for you for all the nice things you said. Thank you to UNT Dallas. Thank you to Dallas Black Chamber and the Search Institute for this opportunity to be a partner in this and to help get the word out about the information that's relevant to the members and community that we serve, and which happens to be a very diverse one. And I'm not as sophisticated as Harrison, so I'm gonna need a little help with my presentation here on my slides. So really what I'm gonna touch on is I'm gonna talk a little bit about the chamber itself and then the history. So we're not as old as the Dallas Black Chamber. So we were still not even a thought when the Dallas Black Chamber was started, but the Greater Dallas Hispanic Chamber of Commerce is actually celebrating. We're on the tail end of our 80th year. So the Chamber was founded in 1939 as an advocacy organization that expanded into economic development and programs that really supported and helped grow the small businesses. So you advocate for them on their behalf and help build them too through programs. And that's really a great model that has worked for the organization in the community that we serve. And as Matt said, I did serve on the board and I did serve as chair at one time back in 2009 and into 2010, which was a great experience for me. Really taught me a lot about the community, taught me a lot about what advocacy was and what the chamber itself was doing, taking that opportunity. As you can see, here we are several years later, and I'm still doing this now as president and CEO. And it really just gave me the passion to do the work that I'm doing. So So that being said, if we could go to the next slide, please. I'm going to talk a little bit about what the chamber members' profiles looks like. And as you can see, we have about 3,900 GDXC active profiles, and that's made up of corporate partners, public and private sector, small businesses, individuals, and nonprofits. Small business members, 1,100, and really the reason that we have a high number is because of I mentioned the programs in the earlier. We have programs like cooperative agreement with the U.S. Department of Transportation, where we actually serve 4 states in that under that cooperative agreement. We cover Texas, Louisiana, Oklahoma, and New Mexico. And we have a team of 6. So as you can imagine, we're pretty spread thin, but we have a great team that works very hard and does a great job in supporting and growing and helping these businesses. And the makeup of the profile is actually going to be sort of broken down into these different categories of industries, and it's going to be anywhere from construction, and I'm talking about from corporates all the way to small businesses and everything in between. Construction, to bank, savings and loan, investment and finance, hospitality, manufacturing and processing, professional services, radio, television, media, PR, IT, computer programming, as you can see, restaurants, cafes, retailers, wholesalers, distributors, transportation. There's a lot of transportation and infrastructure businesses that we work with. Logistics, janitorial, translation services, HR, and staffing. These are the primary areas. There are several others, but these are the main ones that we have. Our mission to grow and support the Hispanic business community in North Texas, and our vision to create an inclusive business community in North Texas and ensure that Hispanic businesses have the tools and opportunities to fulfill their business vision. I will say that what got us into the program side of things is back in the 1990s, the Greater Dallas Hispanic Chamber of Commerce was the pilot program in, I believe, 1994. And I think I got my years right. And it was 1994 that the Greater Dallas Hispanic Chamber of Commerce was the pilot program for what the city started as the Business Assistance Center, which was a HUD-funded community block development CDBG funding, which was actually an opportunity to help people become self-employed by starting their own business. And that was the objective and the goals there. And that program ultimately, which was very innovative for its time, was what sort of started us in our programs. And it helped us grow and start a lot of businesses that became members over the years and success stories down the road. Fast forward to a few years later, and what we learned from that Business Assistance Center program was that really it takes more than just helping them to start a business. They really need the help, the support, the technical assistance, and the guidance to really help grow the business from that point to scale and to address the issues. So like I said, advocacy, economic development, programs, and then growth for small businesses, connecting to opportunities for our partners. Not only do we advocate, but we also help connect. We have great corporate partners from all sectors that really look to connect with our businesses and that work with us. We're only as successful and effective as our partners are engaged, if that makes any sense. So because we don't do it ourselves, we work with our partners. They're either investing or they're bringing resources or expertise to help us help the businesses and support them to make sure that they're able to connect and also understand what it is to do business and have the capacity to do the business with those partners that are making those opportunities available. So next slide, please. So as everybody knows, COVID-19 hit and the world changed. And small businesses, minority-owned businesses were the ones that really got hit the hardest. And right away, what we did is we, as a chamber, had to pivot. Much like Harrison talked about, we became virtual pretty much almost overnight once it became apparent that it was going to be stay home, stay safe, and the quarantine was in place. And I will credit our team for doing a great job of transitioning into a virtual environment. And what we learned from being virtual is that you can do more with less, and you can be much more effective in terms of how much you're increasing your reach. And when I say more with less, we were able to do more than just one event a month or one event every other week. Now we're doing up to 2 to 3, sometimes depending on the size of the event. We were able to do multiple events and work with partners to go ahead and do that. And it cost us a lot less, and our team was able to be effective in doing so. And right away, what we realized was businesses were needing access to information. Everybody was starving for information because everything was unknown. So what we tried to do and became pretty successful at the beginning was conduit of information, trying to help connect businesses to information on what is available out there for them to be able to utilize as resources, and access to anything from resources that would be loans, or access to capital, or access to any type of fund that's available out there. So we were trying to help connect our members and help them through the process, technical assistance to help them and guide them as whatever we were able to do. Because SBA, as everybody knows, when it started out with the EIDL and then the PPP, it was not exactly the easiest process to apply, to understand the process. So we had the SBA multiple times to help educate all of us on that process as they were going through it and learning it themselves. But as you can see, what we started also doing was trying to understand what their challenges were as they were going through this process. So we started doing a couple of surveys. We did mostly program surveys for some of our program members, and because we had access to them and we were still continuing with some of our programs, and we were able to capture some of this information. And the first question was obviously, what are the new challenges, if any, for your business as a result of COVID-19? And as you can see, we were seeing these businesses were seeing, you know, anything from no sales as a result of COVID-19. Social distancing was hurting business, obviously, uncertainty regarding further investment, and then unable to pay monthly operating expenses, which was the highest one at 32%. And this was conducted at the end of April. So that was information that obviously we were able to learn a lot from our businesses as we were working through this ourselves. Next slide, please. We also asked them, how can the Greater Dallas Hispanic Chamber of Commerce help you and your business at this time? And because we wanted to know, okay, so what are your challenges, but what can we do to help? And one was access to capital. While we are not in the business of providing access to capital ourselves, we have many partners that do. And if we could connect them, that's a win for all of us. Access to new business opportunities, access to training. So what we're taking from all of this is that we're helping to connect, but also helping to understand how to formulate and design programs to be able to support them throughout this process. We also asked them to provide additional feedback and anything that maybe we weren't asking. And one of them was obviously access to general information and more networking opportunities, which was becoming challenging with the virtual environment. And then we got a thank you. And then there was access to more information in Spanish. One of the biggest challenges for many of the businesses we serve is the language barrier. And so we started making that available on our site, translating as much as we can as far as the content from all the different resources that are available. Next slide, please. We also did another survey after the fact, and this was a bigger survey in terms of the number that went out, but as this thing is playing out, we were seeing less and less responses from the general membership. But I can tell you that the responses did tell us this from an executive summary standpoint. This is more specifically as it relates to the SBA resources and loans that were available as a result, the EIDL and the PPP. And what we were able to find out was 50% applied for both, and 21% did not for either. 75% of those who applied say they were approved for PPP. So that's actually a pretty high number compared to what we were initially hearing. 70% said that the PPP funding received was what they requested. Loan apps were either small or large. And let me back up. When I say 75% applied and said they were approved, as this thing was playing out, there was a period in there in the middle where there was everything sort of stopped and it became very quiet and silent. And I think that was where the big challenge was in the waiting period. But it seems like that has since picked up, and we're seeing some of these businesses actually getting the funding that they requested. Loan apps were either small or large. 35% applied for PPP loans less than $50,000. 40% applied for PPP loans in excess of $200,000. 35% of applications were made with small banks. However, and many of the banks that the main bank that they focused and worked with was Chase Bank. They represented the largest number of actual loans to many of the respondents. And then while 57% applied for the EIDL, 82% reported that they did not receive an EIDL advance. And that I think was probably a part of the change that happened. And then 56% said they were able to survive 4 months to 1 year, if depending on how optimistic they were, and 22% were indefinitely. The next slide, please. And this really just tells more detail about what I just gave as far as the executive summary. And we can make this information available to everybody after the fact, if that's okay, Matt. Really the rest of the slides are just going to be telling that same story in terms of the details on what the executive summary was. So at this point, I'm willing to take any questions if there are any, or if you'd like to move on to the next speaker.
Great. Thank you very much. And I'm going to stop sharing. And I want to take some time to open the floor for questions for both Harrison and for Rick, so we can talk to our local advocates before we move to our state and our national representatives. I believe we have a question from, let's see, I'm reading it. The author Lumsey is here as well. Are you able to ask the question that was on the Q&A form? I was not able to see it. Well, before we ask that question, I have a question for both of you. One, thank you all for providing statistical information. I noticed that you both had very similar data pool of 100 to 150 or so businesses. What are some of the qualitative comments that you received from business owners that is not addressed in the surveys?
Rick, would you like me to take that first?
Sure.
I mean, a lot of business owners are just upset. A lot of what we didn't know at the time was that small businesses, and especially small Black businesses, are making an exodus from big banks because they just couldn't get the service they needed at their greatest time of help. And, you know, a lot of them were just upset. And then even some of the businesses that were looted downtown that were Black owned, just dismayed because at this point in time, they now have to deal with, another crisis on top of a crisis. So, a lot of these businesses were also talking to us about the fact that they were underfunded and they were sweating bullets just walking into a bank because they've typically not been able to do so without, without fearing that they won't get any kind of funding. So this was just a huge moment for them to figure out one, what banking opportunity they could find with usually a smaller banking institution. And then in our slide, one of those newer banks to the Dallas area, First United Bank, really stepped up in a large way to help. They did some webinars with us. They had an in-house SBA lender. But, without resources like that, we largely wouldn't have been able to help a lot of banks. And not to mention also, I think a lot of small Black business owners learned for the first time what a CDFI is, or that they have access to some of these CDFIs and how they may operate. We even found a few new Black CDFIs that go across the nation, and they reached out to us to help on a local scale for us in that way. So we learned a lot collectively together. And we also learned about the SBA. There were so many Black business owners who came to us who didn't know that the SBA had similar products like this. They'd never heard of it. They didn't know how to access it. So now that really changes the calculus for what we're going to focus on moving out of this pandemic.
Great.
I would have to echo what Harrison said. Pretty much the same thing with a few different changes in terms of some of the different challenges. I would say the language barrier was an issue, which I mentioned before, for some businesses. And also, what we learned was about the banking relationship, that obviously nobody knew that was going to be an issue until it became an issue. And then once it became an issue, we didn't know what to do from that point forward. And then we became aware that there were additional non-traditional lenders that were going to be made accessible in terms of the PPP program as part of as lenders themselves. And so that as soon as that became available to the small businesses, we were able to connect them to the CDFIs that we work with, which are great partners. We have some great relationships there, and they know how to work with some of these small businesses, and they have already been doing it for so many years. And really, it's been a godsend to have those partnerships because they've done a great job in working with them, and working with us too on that, because as a chamber, we've also been impacted as an organization. There's a lot of expectation, but also we've got to find a way to make sure that our people are taken care of as well.
Well, thank you both for answering my question. I do want to address one more issue in the question that Christina posed. And Christina, I'm going to, I've read your comment and question. I'm going to summarize it. And so if I butcher it, my apologies, don't charge my heart. But you are saying some really great stuff here, especially in terms of the lack of trust. Small businesses, particularly historically disenfranchised businesses, ethnic, non-white businesses, non-white male businesses, in terms of getting funding with this federal relief aid through the CARES Act. It showed that it was a very frustrating process. In fact, a lot of people were very discouraged by it and was pessimistic in the first place, and then was validated by the lack of resources coming promptly to these businesses. What are you all's position on that, and what would you do to encourage or to or make aware to businesses on how they should get relief funding? We'll start with Rick first.
I was kind of hoping you'd go with Harrison, because I was going to have to ask you, if you could repeat the question, because it's a pretty.
So the premise is people don't trust this PPP process or the CARES Act for small businesses. What can they do on the local side, locally here in Dallas, to ensure relief funding, or what process is the best process possible for this funding, or for any funding?
Well, I think locally, what we all know is that there have been additional funds made available at the local level from the city, the county. So we're seeing this, a lot of it is CARES Act funding that's coming through to the local side. And, but it is being made accessible through the local municipality or county. And so it does have a connection to a local representative, and obviously it's not something that you're dealing with in DC. I will say that the SBA was I'm guessing, you know, it must have been very hard for them. And talking to our friend Kurt out there, you know, he was kind of going, they were trying to build this as they were going through it. And so but it seems like as of you know, the last few weeks, they've really been sort of ahead of this thing as much as they can be in terms of how they're doing and operating on their end, and being much more responsive. So, but it was a challenge early on, and for us, it was helping to connect to anything that was available. So anything that partners, anything, private sector, local, municipal governments, anything that was a resource, we were trying to connect them to that. And if it didn't work, let's look for another one, you know, just it's like anything else. We were trying to find it as they were trying to find it. We were trying to help them at the end of the day, make sure.
Makes sense. Thanks, Rick.
Matt, to answer that question, firstly, it is a great question. We have known a lot of this information prior to COVID-19. You know, I was at City Hall before COVID-19 struck and became a pandemic, and there was this huge pictogram on the wall at City Hall, of all places, with a map of redlining. And then next to that map, where you could overlay, they had a health disparities map for Methodists that just showcased all the places that have been redlined, the lack of resources in those communities, and the health disparities. And then they showed the crime, and they laid out, you know, where most of the inmates in these different penitentiaries around Texas are coming from. And, you know, they're coming from the same places where there's a lack of resources, where there's a lack of opportunity. And so we have known this. And a part of what we touched on in my presentation was a guaranteed pool concept. And we thought local because we know that right now federally it's just difficult. And we don't know what kind of support we'll have coming from federal government right now in terms of funding. And like Rick alluded to a second ago, I mean, they were trying to get this funding out as quickly as they were passing the legislation. So there was bound to be some issues with it. But the guaranteed pool concept works on a local level. And what we want to do is turn Dallas into a small business launch pad. And you can take a guaranteed pool concept or fund that you raise, and instead of giving that money directly out, you give it to a guarantor like a city or a county and let them hold it. And they become guarantors for anybody who's a small minority owned business. anybody who's small, who's minority, who wants to walk into a bank and get a home, they want to get a loan for a home, or anyone who's trying to get access for a loan for anything they need. Now, and the third area we'd like to focus our loan on is the digital divide. We haven't really talked about the 40% of students in DISD who are out of school, who don't have connection to internet in their home. And we're not even talking about infrastructure. We're just talking about people who don't have internet access, or they don't have a computer or a smartphone in 2020. So, for us, a guaranteed pool concept would allow normal citizens in this area to walk into a bank who look like me and go get access to a loan for a capital for whatever they may need to grow. But we're focusing it in those three areas. One is small business, two is affordable housing, and three is any project that is funding help to bridge the digital divide. We think that if we do that on a local level, we can turn Dallas into an entrepreneurial launch pad like never before, and create opportunity for people who look like us.
Good deal. Thank you both, Rick and Harrison, for the work that you're doing on the local level. And thank you for representing our communities well. Next, I want to introduce to you someone who is very familiar to a lot of us, as we are, I know definitely Harrison and myself are stepping on his shoulders at 6'4", with all the work that he's done in this community. Mr. Charles ONeal. Charles ONeal serves as president of the Texas Association of African American Chambers of Commerce, and is currently the chair of the board of the U.S. Black Chambers, Inc., who Ron Busby is the president. But before all of that, he served as first chair of the Dallas Black Chamber of Commerce, and then president of the Dallas Black Chamber of Commerce, advocating for the creation and advocacy of African-American-owned businesses for most of his life. His background is in the newspaper business, and he is an amazing citizen. And Charles ONeal, thank you for taking time out for this forum. You're on mute. I believe you're on mute, Charles.
Say, Matt, thanks so much, man, and I appreciate the opportunity to join you. Good to see you, Rick. And Ramiro, I wasn't going to get on until I saw you going to be on there, and I said, I'm going, man. I'm going. So good to see everybody. Thanks so much again, Matt. Harrison, we love you, man. Thanks so much for what you do. Matt, I like to color outside the lines.
Yes, that's why you're here.
I'll start with just a brief overview, as everyone else has done. The Texas Association of African American Chambers of Commerce was, in this incarnation of its life, was founded in 1988, so a little over 30 years. But I like to trace our roots to 1936, which was the creation of the Texas State Negro Chamber of Commerce, created during the Texas Centennial celebration at Fair Park, where at that time the two existing Black chambers in the state, Houston, are the two existing Negro Chambers of Commerce, Houston and Dallas, came together with a group of business owners from around the state in recognition of the fact that the very unique challenges faced by Black-owned businesses in Texas needed a voice beyond that which was available to those in their individual locations. And so, again, we are a statewide organization at this point7 chambers of commerce from the Panhandle to the Gulf Coast to Piney Woods and back to Central Texas. Clearly, there are 6-7 Black chambers in the DFW Metroplex. We are every place that Black folk are in business in the state of Texas. Virtually, there is a Black Chamber of Commerce serving those communities. You see on my background, I just left our monthly board meeting for the U.S. Black Chamber. We're a 10-year-old organization representing 129 chambers in 42 states. As you noted, ably served by our president, Ron Busby, who gets to interact with Ramiro on a regular basis there in DC. And so to my point, and again, I thank Rick and Harrison for the kinds of presentations that you made that's full of real data, empirical evidence of where we find ourselves now in the heat of the COVID pandemic, and that underscored by what we find faced in civic unrest, I think is the kind of well, again, it underscores the fact that we're always been in a pandemic. That is Black-owned businesses in this state, brown, Hispanic, or Latino-owned businesses have always struggled against the odds. One thing that I want to, and I think Rick touched on it right toward the end of his presentation, the organizations, chambers, designed to support businesses that are struggling are going to struggle unless something very special happens. But let me get to my point about what I believe the impact of COVID-19 has been to both Black Chambers of Commerce and Black-owned businesses. As I noted, I believe that the very unique challenges faced by the people that I work for, you could say we've always been under duress. What the identified pandemic has done is reawakened in us the necessity for thinking and acting in survival mode. Because if we don't get this work done, 41% of Black-owned businesses are expected to be gone as we speak. That could easily be 60, that could easily be 70, unless somebody steps in the gap. Business owners are struggling on a day-to-day basis just to keep their doors open, and without an advocacy organization to do all the behind-the-scenes machinery, if I'm in business, I can't think about a loan pool, Harrison. I mean, somebody else has got to do that for me. And then unless it gets done, my car's repoed, my mortgage is foreclosed, the whole deal. And so I think that our ability to serve the people that we work for, the businesses that we represent, is even more critical now. And if I use the role that we play at TAC, clearly you all know that we spend probably 80% of our time interacting with state government. Why? Because we have a legitimate claim on taxpayer investment. We pay taxes at the same rate as everybody else. Our ROI is less than everybody else's. And so we think we have a legitimate case to make in the state's responsibility in making sure that businesses are profitable and able to access those opportunities, thereby doing the stuff that chambers do, quality of life stuff. Why the CARES Act and PPP and EIDL did not trickle down, to use the term, it's because they weren't designed to trickle down. Lobbyists create those deals, and so if you don't have someone working on your behalf in a legislative body, the likelihood of you getting the stuff that you need in a bill that's going to pass is pretty slim. And so small businesses that were included in the CARES Act or those small businesses with 500 employees and $50 million in revenue. That's not the people that we work for. And so the creative things that, as Harrison referenced, the creation of a local loan pool that does rely on federal dollars that have made their way back to municipalities, is a creative use or creative approach to making sure that some of the benefit of piece of legislation that was passed does accrue to the people who are financing it ultimately. I think finally, and I'll be finished, I think that this entire discussion kind of answers the question that each of us has been asked at some point in our careers. Why do you need a Black chamber? Why do you need a Hispanic chamber? It's because we got very unique challenges and they're not being met by the output of federal legislation, very clearly, again, against the backdrop of our experience here in Austin, not being met by state government. And so without a strong advocacy voice, those concerns, again, stereotypically will go unmet or unheard, certainly unaddressed. And so opportunities like this, Matt, again, thank you, give us a chance to sort of reconnect that, realizing that the issues that we face feel very, very, very personal on one level when you're working on by yourself, but then you get to talk to Ramiro and you realize, wait, man, I did that last week. Or he's gonna say, well, I did that last week. We got some things that we can work on together. And ultimately, that's going to be the real solution. I often remind Governor Abbott that Texas has the largest Black population among the 50 states. Clearly, Texas has is just a hair behind California for the second largest number of Latinos in the country. Our state is over 65% non-white, but 94% of every dollar that the state spends goes to a white-owned business. That glaring disparity does not bode well for the future of the people that we work for. And so unless we can begin to address or begin to have more alignment between the realities, demographic realities, and what we find in the marketplace, we'll be in a pandemic long after the vaccine has been found. Thank you.
So ONeal, thank you very much. And due to time, I am going to consolidate questions after Mr. Cavazos' presentation because I am looking at some of the questions and chats, and they are, all of this is stemming on one, frustration, and make sure we're actioning. And I definitely agree with them. I thank everyone for their participation and your input. All of us are feeling this frustration. And we want to work to be a solutions-oriented program. We know that we're not going to get the answers today, but just the four of you all, as we start opening up for questions, think about how you answer your question as solutions-oriented for our attendees to take away afterwards. All right? All right. Finally, our present, but definitely not least, we have Mr. Ramiro Cavazos, who is the president of the United States Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. Ramiro Cavazos is the president. Previously, he served as president and CEO of the San Antonio Hispanic Chamber of Commerce for 10 years. With his expertise in economic development, he has served as Director of Economic Development for the City of San Antonio, Director of Research and Economic Development for the UT Health Science Center, and as the Global as the Global Public Affairs Manager for the Levi Strauss Company and Foundation for the Texas, Mexico, and Latina American region. Ramiro has a Master's of Public Administration from St. Mary's University and holds a bachelor's degree in government from the University of Texas at Austin. A native of Weslaco in the Rio Grande Valley, he is a seventh generation Texan. Ramiro and his wife, Krista, are parents of 2 boys, 13 and 10 years old. Mr. Cavazos, how are you, sir?
Thank you, Mr. Houston. It's an honor to be here, and thank you for inviting me to serve on this panel and represent the United States Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. I want to, in particular, thank UNT for putting us all together. Collaboration is key between our Black community and our Latino community. And I want to commend Rick Ortiz for the invitation to be a part of this with you all, and for his great leadership for now more than 8 years in the Dallas area. And I love the fact that he's collaborating with Harrison and the Greater Dallas Black Chamber. And thank you, Rick, for your leadership. We're very proud to have Dallas's presence in this fight. And then Mr. ONeal, Charles, thank you for the partnership that we have that is so solid and real with the U.S. Black Chamber and the U.S. Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. We truly see this as an opportunity to create wealth in our community. And the one question we need to ask everyone that runs as a CEO of a corporate 1,000 firm, or a large, even minority firm, or a large CEO of a state like Governor Abbott, is, can I see a picture of your executive leadership team and company board, and does it reflect the community you represent? And so I'll be very brief, and I think everyone has said it very well, that we are going through an opportunity to create real change in our country. I will agree with all of you that data is powerful and critical. As a Black community, our heart at this time goes out to the family of George Floyd and the murder that occurred in broad daylight, and the fact that it is unconscionable that that has happened for centuries. And for us, you know, this opportunity right now, on top of COVID and on top of the 99% of our protests, which are nonviolent, is indicative of the fact that real change and systemic change needs to occur. We have been busy the last 120 days since this started to provide advocacy at the federal level in Washington, working with Ron Busby and the U.S. Black Chamber and others to make sure that we provided the liquidity through the CARES Act. There's no question that it didn't trickle down to our people through the CARES Act round 2. We did add an additional $60 billion for $30 billion, I apologize, for the minority depository institutions, and also for community development, CDFIs, and of course, MDIs. Community banks are now at the table. There's no question Chase was the #1 lender nationally, but they were one of the original SBA certified firms to do lending. Now, as you all know, we have credit unions, we have Black CDFIs and brown CDFIs, and more than 6,000 lenders have changed the landscape now for lending for years to come. And you all know that even non-banks doing lending like PayPal and Square and others. So the environment will be changed forever from an access to capital. That's the good news. We just passed last week through the Senate and the House, of course, the bill that is known as the Paycheck Protection Flexibility Act of 2020. There's still over $100 billion of liquidity left, and we need to get as much of those dollars out before the end of June 30th. Our job is, again, to be very transparent also in seeking the SBA, that when these loans are applied for, that we know if they're a African-American owned business or a Latino owned business. Those questions were not asked before, so there was no way of knowing where those loans were going. And that's where Mr. ONeal and Mr. Busby and myself have been working hard with Mr. Ortiz to get that advocacy out there. English and Spanish has been a tremendous need for getting the information out there in our country. And there's no question that the beauty of what this crisis brings is the solidarity between the Black community and the Latino community. Many of you know that Latinos are also Afro-Latinos, a big percentage of our population. And in addition to that, you know, we need to embrace the fact that we shouldn't give up. The point that Charles mentioned earlier, that less than 7% of federal contracting and state contracting is going to Black firms and brown firms, is true. That's our tax money, and the largest buying service in the world is the U.S. Department of Defense, and most of those dollars are not going in the pockets of our people. The last point I want to mention, because I know it would be great to open it up to questions, is as a U.S. Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, we are proud to work with Ron and the U.S. Black Chamber. We have 250 Latino chambers, Dallas being one of those leading chambers. There are 30 million small businesses in America. 8 million of those are minority-owned firms, and close to 5 million are Hispanic-owned firms. And for us, a need for change, permanent change on corporate boards and on executive teams to help them make better decisions about procurement, giving, philanthropy, contracting, business expansion is long overdue. They need to reflect the community they represent and have not represented for many years. So it's an honor to come from a San Antonio Hispanic Chamber like Rick, where we have an understanding of the community's needs. It's an honor to be in Washington and headquartered there, knowing that change is going to occur. We need to demand change, and we should not give up on this opportunity that sometimes storms come our way, not to disrupt, but to clear the path forward. And 2020 will be a year where we will not forget this year, but it will be a year where hopefully we can begin to create tangible growth and change in our communities and create wealth, permanent wealth, and change the family trees of our Black community and our Hispanic community. So with that, it's an honor to be with each of you. I want to continue to collaborate, and thank you to each of you. If Harrison is one of the older millennials, I'm one of the younger baby boomers in this country.
Mr. Cavazos, one, thank you for your remarks, and thank you for such a youthful spirit that you have, that you give to us. Gentlemen, thank you all for making remarks. The time is 1:03 now. We will open the floor up for questions. Thank you, attendees, for writing questions. I want to start back at the beginning. It's a local question that is aimed at both Rick and Harrison, and then Mr. ONeal and Mr. Cavazos. If you would like to respond, you can. The local funding is first come, first served, and it's still misappropriated. Black businesses also have higher interest rates. What factors are being considered? Because I have friends who are poor business owners and have not received funding yet. I'm assuming PPP funding. Do y'all have any response or remarks?
Matt, could you repeat that first part of that question one more time?
The local funding is on a first come, first served basis, and it's still misappropriated. Black businesses also have a higher interest rates. What factors are being considered? Because I have friends who are business owners and have not received funding yet.
In terms of factors being considered for the loan, they're definitely checking credit. They are definitely, and I saw one of the responses in the comment thread on here about how business had to wait from April to June to get access to their loan, and once they got approved, they were then notified they were no longer approved because in the time that they've been out of business, their credit score dropped. And, you know, it's understandable in the midst of the crisis that they could not afford, probably some of the bills and some of the debts they had coming in because business is closed. So that's definitely one of the factors they're looking at. We offered early on the city of Dallas to look at our technology and how it could easily help businesses that we already know were having a hard time with the PPP and EIDL paperwork. So we're trying to work through that now to see how we can partner, because we know, as we said earlier, Rick and I and everybody on this call, we work with organizations that do need specialized help because they've been cut out of the system. So we're working on that now, and we've been able to get people funded through that app. So we're trying to expand its usability, and we're even offering our member is offering to help as much as possible with any other organization that's interested, because I think this solution can be powerful. And for us, this fintech app is going to outlive the crisis. You'll be able to basically use this as a loan packaging tool or a grant packaging tool. In the future, once the app is complete, you'll be able to jump on there and look at what's available. You'll be able to quickly apply because the conversational chatbots will ask you all the questions that you need, and it will no longer be about relationship. We have banks that are working through our app that are coming from over the country who just want to get businesses funded. We've got CDFIs who just want to get businesses funded. They know they're going to get the 5% lift on the loan, and some of them actually do feel bad about not helping small Black businesses. I'm not going to say all of them. I don't purport to know what they think, but I know for sure that one of the main focuses for us is using technology to solve some of these problems in a simple way.
Good deal. Great answer. Rick, do you have a response or anything to add?
If I recall correctly, the question was what, local funding was first come, first serve. I believe that the city had two. I believe the city had two funds. One was a first come, first serve. The other one was a lottery, which was for which was CDBG funding. But either way, that the amounts were small. I think to really make a difference in helping businesses, it was something, and something's always better than nothing, especially in these days. And I want to start off by saying, one of the things that we continue to do and didn't stop doing, and it's hard work, but it's what we started off doing and continue to do, and that's advocacy. And what it's understanding what's going on around us and try to understand how to be effective in terms of advocating. And I will say that the great thing about having these partnerships and these relationships is that there's strength in numbers, right? And collectively, we're able to do more. And I think, as unfortunate as the recent tragedy was, I think I want to echo what Ramiro said. I think there is an opportunity. I think there seems to be a wake up, sort of like a moment of clarity. We've been banging our heads against the wall for how many years now, all of us, and the reality is, these organizations, I'm speaking for us, many times we're marginalized and seen as sort of like find a way to sort of keep them at a distance. And I think today is, hopefully it's a new day that we can build on. It's not going to be easy, but I think that, there's an opportunity for all of us. And I will, commend all of you guys for the great work you're doing on the advocacy front and for the partnerships that we have. I know working with Ramiro too, in his role. Thank you for your work. Getting information at all levels of government is so crucial. And especially as you get up higher, you have to have a larger grouping in terms of number of voices. So.
Thank you, Rick. And if I may, Mr. Houston, real briefly say that let's not allow anyone to divide and conquer the Black community and the Brown community. We need one another. And as Mr. ONeal said, we're the majority population in Texas, and together is going to be unstoppable. Once that momentum builds, and we need to build on that momentum, as Rick said, this is our time to really create real change. And I just wanted to offer to anyone that's on this call that we're able to, with your loan application number, and I put it on the webinar chat, if you have your loan number, Rick, we'd be happy for any members of the Black Chamber, the Hispanic Chamber, to trace your loan with our representatives at the SBA. We have some good contacts in the Washington office, so we can try to get you a response to know where you're at if they haven't heard back, Harrison or Rick.
And I also want to thank the attendees who have resources as well, that they're sharing it via the chat. We're all in this together. All of us are frustrated, and we all are looking for solutions so that we can build our communities. I know that there's been a gross neglect for our minority communities receiving this funding. I did hear, and this is not, I'm not an official word here, but in terms of the first round of the PPP funding, it was sold to society that it's available for small businesses instantly. But after peeling the onion back, they already had earmarked, I don't want to call it earmarked, that's a bad word, but there was a line of businesses that are larger and brighter than ours in terms of pigmentation that were in line ahead of us. So that the rationale of the relief is that if big businesses don't fail, then the smaller businesses who are providing subcontracts or who providing services to them will be able to work also. But it just didn't happen that way. So I want to put that out there, that advocates like heads of chambers of commerce are getting the same frustrations that regular citizens are getting. And so with that, I'm going to veer off for an aside question, because I made an assumption that people understand what Black chambers and what Hispanic chambers do in relation to civil rights, in relation to our community movements. We always see social uprising. We are seeing protesting, but it's not sexy to see the work the chambers of commerce are doing to make those permanent changes. So either four of you all just give us a brief example of how your organization contributes to the movement that residents or that activists are doing out in the streets to better our communities.
And I'll jump in since I'm the oldest baby boomer in the crowd. I'll go first. Tell folks all the time, this is not a fake cosmetic gray beard. This is the real deal. I've grown fond, and I've said this, and I've tried to preach this into Harrison for the last year or so. I've grown fond of quoting Harold Cruz in his 1968 book, Rebellion or Revolution. And it's buried way down in the middle of the book, but it popped out to me that while it is true that ideologies move men, it is economics that feeds, clothes, and shelters them. If ideologies are not understood in terms of economics, they're not understood at all. And so we're not civil rights organizations, we're not social organizations, but very clearly, much of what our communities, respective communities, face are as challenges, healthcare access, education access, blah, 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 have at their root got no money. And in a capitalism or a market economy, without money to function, you're going to be at a severe disadvantage, whatever else is going on. And so to the extent that we can move the needle in the marketplace, we can begin to address those social challenges that all of our communities face. Again, just go down the list, including policing.
Thank you, Mr. ONeal. Any other remarks?
The only thing I would add, Matt, is that the key thing here, and I think you all know that's part of the solution, getting back to Charles's point, we need to get out to vote and we need to fill our census. If we don't do those two things, we're not going to be counted.
Agreed.
And just to jump in on this with Charles ONeal and Ramiro, one of the things that the chamber really understands in Dallas is that we don't protest, we don't march, but we understand that we better have those policies and that agenda ready when people are coming to talk about policy. There are a number of groups calling for defunding the police. There are a number of groups calling for us to sign on to proclamations that say we don't agree with the damage of property, and we can't just wade into those conversations lightly and just say we agree with business or we don't agree with the loss of life. And even though I saw in here one of our guests in the chat even mentioned that this panel is even during George Floyd's funeral. So, for us, the big thing is just focusing on making sure that we support the movement and that we come up with the policies and we talk about the economics of the deal. And like Charles ONeal is saying, for us, we can't deny that we have to be a part of the movement. And I said it earlier, you can't hope to build wealth in this country if you can't protect your own body. And Ta-Nehisi Coates, who I found myself quoting more and more, really discusses the law of protecting one's own body and the rules that a lot of African Americans and a lot of people from brown communities have to live by because we don't get services. And when we talk about the economics of the deal and the police officers, if police are not protecting our communities, then what does that mean for a business? And if 60% of the city of Dallas's budget goes to safety, then what else are we not funding that our community needs? I can take you on a ride through the communities in Dallas and just show you how beautiful some communities are and how depressed others are because of the lack of funding and the lack of resources. But as soon as gentrification is ready to knock on the door, they start laying tickets on cars and the code starts coming over there. And it's not to help the people in the community, but to get them ready to get out of the way. So when we start talking about the economics of the deal, the same forces that put a knee on George Floyd's neck are the same forces that keep you from getting a loan at the bank. or the same forces that ensure that you don't have access to education, or the same forces that that don't have any recourse or any punishment for people who would murder a citizen in open broad daylight and keep their hands in their pocket. So, all those things have an intersectionality, and we recognize that at the chamber. So a lot of the work we do, like Matt, you said, isn't sexy. It's talking on the phone, it's getting on panels like this, and it's watching people who are in the streets. But I want to say unequivocally, I support Black Lives Matter, and I always have, because all these people who are coming out to say that they care about Black lives, even though they've watched with us for decades as Black lives have been taken senselessly, the Black Lives Matter movement has been moving those people. They've been moving the needle. I've seen more people who know the history. They're forcing presidential candidates from both sides to talk about Black Wall Street and other instances that have happened in this country. And I stand with them on that. I'm very thankful for that. They put their bodies on the line so that we can go out and build better, bigger businesses and help create economic base to support our community. So that's where we are on that.
Thank you very much, President Blair. I did post in our group chat a name of an attorney. His name is Larry Taylor. There was a question and a couple of concerns on finding some ways to either combat or make accountable this process in terms of funding. Larry Taylor is he's partner of the Cochran law firm. It's a nationally based law firm which offices in Dallas and Houston. There's two of many offices. Larry Taylor is the managing partner, but he have provided webinars on business owners if they have problems or feel that they are disserviced through this process. I provided his contact information. I know that was one of the questions that was on our Q&A. Let's see the next questions. Also, there's another question, and I thank you, Gary, for this. I did not take this as disrespect, but would you please provide, I know Harrison did initially, provide which one of these groups are teaching minority businesses on how to build businesses throughout the state and how you are doing. So talk a little bit about either programming opportunities or conferences that you all do to equip your members to do business, city and state and national level.
I guess I could start. We work with all the local government, and we also work with all levels of government where we can, and we work with for instance, DFW Airport's a great partner in working with us to help educate members on how to do business with DFW Airport. Same thing goes for Dallas ISD. We work with them, and as part of our contract, our partnership contract, we do have every year we work with them and their team, their MWB department, on connecting our members to understanding what the process is, how to apply, how to submit your business, and make sure that you're in the database to make sure that you're able to even look for the opportunities. In other words, we help facilitate and help educate and inform the members that we work with. And also, for instance, we work with I mentioned the cooperative agreement with the U.S. Department of Transportation on any federally funded transportation infrastructure project that's DOT funded. We work with the businesses on getting, you're not going to get in and get a contract if you're not bondable. So we work with them on bonding education. And so those are the types of things that we do in terms of the programs that we do.
Mine's not an answer, rather a response to Mr. Wade. He and I have talked over the years. I know that he has a solution that he does offer in the marketplace, an academy that they're working on, and that perhaps will be a great topic for another webinar, Matt.
Yeah.
But the facts are that the administration of MWBE policies and our hub policies on the state level are not fair. And so while you can teach folk how to play the game, so to speak, the game is rigged. And unless there's somebody marshaling or monitoring the application of the statutes that govern utilization, we'll continue to get the kind of outcomes, no matter what the level of training is made available to business owners to access opportunities. And so it has to be both rather than one or the other. You know, right this moment, the state of Texas historically underutilized business program is in peril. And it's in peril with lackluster performance. So, I mean, the 6 or 7% that I identified as the sum total of Black, Brown, Asian Pacific Islander, Native American utilization could conceivably go away without it ever having met the promise of the original intent of the legislation. And so, again, that is irrespective of how skilled business owners are at accessing programs. The facts are that the programs were designed to fail. And so we get the kind of results that we do. And so I would encourage anybody to, again, pursue as readily, as handily, as often as you possibly can, any opportunity under any of those alphabet soup kinds of programs. But understand that understanding the programs is just part of the solution.
Good. Great job. Harrison, did you have something? I apologize.
Just very brief. First, Dr. ONeal, thank you, because he talked about the dissent that was written by the Supreme Court Justice Thurgood Marshall in the J.A. Croson case. And I've had some time to look through it, and I understand why he said those policies wouldn't work. And historically, I mean, he's almost like the Nostradamus of his day. He told us exactly how these policies would play out, and we're seeing that happen. But at least on a local level, one of the things the Chamber is definitely focused on at this moment, as we get ready to pivot, is how we're working with our different partners who are intergovernmental or quasi-governmental, like Dallas Independent School District. They're going to have to redo that $3 billion bond that just passed this year. You can't have restrooms the way you did prior to COVID-19. You can't serve food the way you did. You won't be able to give contracts and build projects the way you did prior. So that, you know, in this process, we have an opportunity to help on a local level get a lot of small and minority firms working. And so we're calling for cooperative economics and joint ventures and partnerships that put people together so they can be in on this. And Gary, I saw your number in the chat. We'll chat with you about how we help those businesses make that happen. And to Charles O'Neal's point, he's working every day down there, you know, in the state capitol to figure out how we get more access to opportunity for Black businesses. And Dr. O'Neal, if I'm wrong, stop me, but I want to say we make up 15% of the state's tax base, but we make up less than 1% of any of the contracts that go to businesses from the state. Is that correct? Dr. O'Neal?
We're real about a blazing 1.2%.
Yeah, that's number I have to.
A little too high, actually. So, you know, for us, focusing on policies and ideas about how we do that, we are now in a space where, and I say this to all my white friends who are calling to give apologies and tell us how they feel. It's time to write checks and not apologies. It's time, you know, it's time to come with policy that comes from heart and mind. Because what we tried to, you know, after 10 days of violent protests and riots, all we got was the Fair Housing Act out of the Johnson administration. Dallas is still one of the most segregated cities in America. So policy without heart and mind is cheap. So we're looking for some serious solutions, and that's going to take some time. But just know that people like Charles O'Neal and Ramiro are down there fighting for us in so many different capacities. But what Charles O'Neal said about supporting organizations like us is really important. We do need staff. We need people in these meetings. We need strategy, and that costs money. So we appreciate you for any help you can provide. And being a member really matters to us. So, you know, I put the information on the website there.
Good deal. Thank you. And those, Charles and Harrison, I want to say those could use as your concluding remarks. Rick and Ramiro, do y'all have any concluding remarks before we go to our dean?
Love to quote Martin Luther King that we have the fierce urgency of now. And we need to remember that. Those words are now over 50 years old, and we need to move together to make the progress our communities deserve.
Good deal. Thank you. Rick, do you have any more?
I just want to say thank you again, UNT Dallas. Thank you to our partners, Dallas Black Chamber, to all of you guys really for a great dialogue and to hear sort of the different perspectives from all levels. You know, this is going to be, it's not going to be easy, like you said, and it never has been, but but I think, you know, we have an opportunity to at least move the needle a little bit. And so I look forward to working with each and every one of you in doing so. You know, rest assured, we're 100% committed to make, you know, keep it going. So thank you.
Thank you. And let's give everyone a virtual round of applause for all of our presenters today. Thank you. It was very enlightening. It's rare to have community organizations who are working so hard to be able to be on one call. And we have many more things in common than we do difference. And we're all in this fight together. So thank you all for your work. I now want to introduce to everyone Dr. Karen Shumway, Dean of the School of Business at the University of Texas at Dallas. Dr. Shumway.
Thank you. I really want to thank this panel for spending their time with us today. I'm very proud of the School of Business at UNT Dallas. For those of you who may not know, 85% of our students are people of color, 48% Hispanic, 30% African American. Currently, you know, we're known across the country as being very low cost and very low amounts of loans going to our students. So we do everything that we can to give them financial aid packages that are sustainable. 92% of all of our students receive some sort of financial aid, and yet only 21% end up taking a loan home as part of that package. So mostly it's through grants and scholarships. That having been said, we're always looking in the School of Business for ways to make our programming even more meaningful to the community. I've worked with Matt for quite a while now, and it's conversations like this and the issues that I get to hear that are out there in the community that help inform where we go next with our curriculum to serve our students. Most of them come from a 15-mile radius around us, so we need to get those issues out in our classrooms. And I took copious notes today, and I appreciate this opportunity to listen. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for allowing us this platform. And thank you for providing this program. James Agbodzakey, Director of the Search Institute. Thank you for having this as your brainchild. This is not our last meeting. In fact, please attend our sessions every Tuesday from 12 until 1:30 until July, until the end of the second week of July, where next week we'll be discussing housing and loan applications and things of that nature. So this will be a great segue or continuation of this discussion. Please register for that. Also, provide us your feedback on our survey. Arthur Lumsey have created a link under the webinar chat, where you can give us your feedback. Thank you all very much. It is 1:30, and I hope you all have a great Tuesday. Have a good one.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.